Hello and welcome to another episode of the CIRS Group podcast. I'm JC,
And I'm Barbara.
and today we are talking about some of the talks from CIRSx, and these are going to be more patient experience of environment, kind of giving you some tools as a patient, things you can do in your own home. So there's a couple talks here, but again, before we jump in, we are not medical professionals. We have read the CIRS textbook. We go to CIRS conferences, clearly. We have a community of people who are healing from CIRS, but none of this should be taken as medical advice. So the first talk I missed, if you missed the saga of travel events that occurred to me, I missed half the talks on Friday. So Barbara's actually going to take this one.
Yeah, so it was the Oasis talk. Um, one one thing that I will say to preface this is that Oasis is a air purification company. So they are a business. They created an air filtration system in purifier form, words, that is aimed at specifically helping people who are suffering with the symptoms of CIRS. So the reason that's important for me to say is like they are a business. They are in this to make money. It's not a nonprofit situation. We specifically, as in JC and I in the CIRS group, don't have like affiliate relationship with them at all because we do kind of like to stay neutral when it comes to these products and what can or can't help people. But what I will say also about the talk is the talk was very informative as far as, he demonstrated some of the tests, the third party tests that were done on the air filters to show he had video showing, a smoky room being cleared in a certain amount of time. I think it was like 15 minutes or so. And just like the power of the actual filtration itself. They also had someone test, how small of micron particles that it was able to clear and capture. All of that was powerful and interesting. And you could tell from the way that the guy, his name, what the heck was his name? So note to anybody who is doing a presentation, you should have a slide that talks about who you are. That's just generally a good idea. Anyway, it was a representative from Oasis. Could have been the owner, could have been someone high up. We'll figure it. If I find it, we'll put it in the show notes. My point, it's actually a compliment. The reason I'm bringing this up is that you could tell that he cared. I was going to say give a shit, and then I just did. But like he really, really cared about the patient experience, about helping sick people feel better. There was something in his demeanor and the way he presented the information. It did not feel salesy at all. It felt like they really cared, that he was they're excited because they just released the 2.0 version of their air filters. So it's new and improved. It looks sleeker in my opinion. And they're certainly way more powerful. I do have a 1.0 and now I have the 2.0, and like there's a huge difference in the power situation that's going on there. So they feel like they've really improved on their product. They're proud of it. They're excited about it. All that said, the thing that convinced me, like, holy crap, this is like maybe a real deal, like people should actually get these air purifiers, are the conversations we had with other conference goers there at CIRSx. And JC, I think you were around for some of that as well. Like one person said that she had to send her son back to a moldy dorm room because he's in college and like there's no other choice. And she sent him with two small units to like basically run on either side of his head while he slept. And his symptoms actually were kept at bay from that. Like those stories, I know they're anecdotal, but those stories really make the difference for me. And I have to say, I did purchase a couple units as a result of seeing that talk, and they've both have arrived. And the air quality difference in my house is noticeable. It's actually, I'm pretty impressed so far. Now, have I taken tests, to see it, or did my endotoxin score go down? Like, are all these things better in my house yet? Not yet, but I'll keep you guys posted on that in the future. But I am noticing just breathing and like the smell. I have two dogs, all of that is improved with the the air filters. So that's pretty cool.
That's amazing. And I just wanted to note, they do have frequent sales, and we don't have a code, but Christian from CIRS Lab does. So we'll include that in the show notes, try and save you guys some money because they are expensive.
Yeah.
But especially if you're hypersensitive, if your home isn't pristine, if you've just been struggling to feel like you have momentum on the protocol, it is a lever that you can pull. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Just a couple quick tips on that on the filter that I forgot to mention. We will link the owner, John, did a podcast interview with Michael Schrantz, indoor environmental professional, who also happens to have CIRS. They have a podcast episode together. I did listen to it, and it is kind of one big ad, but also again, like they go through the tests and how the tests were performed and all that fun stuff. So I think like if you were more curious about like, I mean, it was basically what the talk was at CIRSx. So if you want to go through some of those things, we'll link that in the show notes. And then if you're wondering how to buy and how to choose which one you buy, the ideal is to have one unit per room, and moving them around within that room is ideal as well, like as often as you possibly can. And when I say that, I mean like every other day would be great, but if you can only move them around once a week, like do that. That's also great. And a tip that my doctor gave me actually was to put them on wheels, like to buy one of those like wheelable plant stands to remove that extra friction of moving them around, literally and figuratively. The mental friction of, oh God, I have to move this giant, purifier again. Like just put it on wheels and it'll be way easier to do that. So yeah, just wanted to mention those two things.
The next talk was an update. So last year, Aaron Pettigrew and Chris Foth spoke at CIRSx, giving their experience as patients. And last year it was kind of a downer because both of them were kind of stalled in the protocol and hadn't seen, the gains that they wanted to in their health. This year it was much more exciting because Aaron, and he said this in the talk, and this is why we're including it in this one, but he shared that he kind of had to get over himself and do the hard things. Like, I think it's hard for all of us to accept that some parts of the protocol are necessary, especially the removing yourself from exposure. It's the hardest step for everyone, is getting out of exposure. And he did the hard thing. He put himself in a quarantine for 6 months. So I believe it was July through December. And he just committed to getting himself in a clean space they had remediated and committing to that clean space for a long enough time that he could heal. And this is kind of relevant. He's a salesman and he travels for work. And so that was a huge decision for him to have to make. But he's so glad he did it. And for me personally, like having interacted with him last year and having interacted with him this year, it was so amazing to see like just his entire demeanor was better. It's giving me tingles right now just thinking about it because I think with CIRS patients, like you go through this period where you feel like you're a ghost. You feel like you're just existing inside of a body. And it's this weird, I mean, this is my experience. I can't project this on everyone, but I can almost see it in other CIRS people. And even we at CIRSx were commenting on people. I think Pettigrew and Foth call it CIRSy, like people just seem CIRSy and you can kind of get that energy for them. But it's so amazing to see someone on the other side of that and to see their energy recover and like vibrancy. And you can tell they've lost that ghostliness, they've lost that CIRSiness, and they're healing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool to have, I'm sure people in their life, they see them on a daily basis, but it's been a year since we saw them. So that difference is huge to us. And it's really cool to have that opportunity to see that in person like that, like you said. Um, One thing that really struck me about like some advice. So Dr. Dorninger is their doctor and was kind of it was an interview style talk. And he asked them like what advice basically would you give to other patients? And the usual like don't cut corners, do it the right way, all the stuff. Verify that work done was done correctly, stuff that we covered in our last episode. What the two tips that I really loved that they said was when symptoms go away, that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I don't need binders today. I feel good. Like they were kind of doing stuff like that. I do stuff like that. So I very much related to that. Like, oh, I'm feeling less brain foggy today. That means like I don't need my mark on spray, or like the motivation isn't there or something to actually do it. It's weird how that happens, but I'm really glad he said that out loud, because it's a reminder that the protocol works. Yes, great, you're feeling better. You gotta keep on it to keep going, basically. And the other focus they had was definitely on mental health and like behavioral stuff that comes up. Just an acknowledgement of the fact that when you are suffering from a chronic illness and you're in pain and you feel like crap and all the things and all the brain tricks, I think that mold plays on us from a mental and emotional standpoint, you're more likely to have these like tough conversations with your spouse or your family, or moments where you lose patience and you say things you regret, all of that stuff. It's just more likely to happen because you're kind of at some level a little miserable. Take time to step away, collect your thoughts, and remind yourself that you're not functioning at high capacity. And I think that advice was very powerful and a great reminder. I hope to anyone listening to this now to have some grace with yourself and remember that, and give yourself space. If you're getting upset and angry and if hopefully in that moment you can remind yourself, this is the CIRS rearing its ugly head, and ask for some time, walk away, take a walk, do what you need to do, calm down, center yourself, and reapproach your family. It's just going to make things a little easier than they are. We're dealing with a lot, I guess, is my point.
And I think the coolest part of their talk is that they started a 501c called the CIRS Project. They are going to be working on transitional housing for CIRS patients. So the way they were talking to us about it was, giving people a place to be so that they can go through the remediation or the relocation so that they can start their healing process sooner. And we are really excited because we're going to have them on the podcast soon. So they'll be able to talk more about the CIRS project, but definitely very needed for our community and very exciting that they've taken on this mantle. I think at one point in one of the CIRS talks, someone shared like you have a responsibility to get well so that you can help people. And whether that's in the CIRS space or elsewhere in your life, like that was really powerful to me to hear and then to see them take on that mantle.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was great. And it's so needed. It's such a perfect thing for them to be working on together. I'm excited for how that's gonna all take shape. Take shape. That was the the phrase I was looking for. CIRS brain. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. And I know one other thing that I did write down from their talk at the end was the three things that they lean into as they continue to heal, and as they hope, help people and share their story, is gratitude, forgiveness, and humor. If you can really hold on to those three things as you go through the very difficult journey of healing from CIRS, I think yeah, I thought that was really beautifully put by them. I'm excited to have them on the podcast soon. And they did do a podcast episode with Dr. Dorninger as well. So I'll link that in the show notes too, in case you want to check that out while you wait for us to have them on our podcast.
As a side note, speaking of humor, I made a LMFAO shots joke in the group today. I was really proud of myself.
Oh my God, I didn't see that yet. I'm excited to go look.
I'm going to give you no other context.
No, that's perfect. Now it's an Easter egg hunt. I'm excited.
The next talk was the actino update from Dr. Eric Dorninger. And I don't want to say it was a nothing burger, but it was less of an update and more of like a will be updated soon.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a little bit of, stuff that we already knew. And yeah, we did do an Actinos episode I think a few months back at this point. And I can link that in the show notes too. But it was basically informational about Actinos, where they come from, what they do, how to figure it out.
So he said one of the things that makes actinos so tricky is that it's a hybrid of bacteria and fungal properties. So it's part of the reason why they're so difficult to kill and manage, and that they are inherently inducers of immunoreactivity. And then the big numbers for actinos, they're not quite sure about how pathogenic all of the species are, but the two you really want to keep an eye on is P. actinos. So I think it's Propionibacter, P. acnes. That's it, P. acnes. And then the other one is the tuberculosium. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But you want you you want both of those to be under 10,000. So when you're doing your actinos, whether it's the environment test or the skin test, you want both of those numbers to be under 10,000.
That was, and maybe you're about to go into this point, but I thought that was interesting that he did mention that it's actually better to do the skin test rather than the environment unless you're living alone. And the reason for that is your environment may be, and that's okay. Like you can test your environment, that's still important, but you can clean that. If you test the skin, and you should test the skin of everyone you live with, then you're kind of identifying who the problem is. Okay, it's not that, like, don't point your finger at them, but like
You're gonna like cause divorces.
I
People are
know.
gonna like ditch their roommates, break their leases.
Yeah. Well, you want to identify the factory, and then you can, that's just more information as to how to attack from there. So yeah, the skin test is actually a little bit preferred now over the environment test, which I think will be different from our last episode on actinos to now. That was kind of news to me even during the talk. Sorry, continue.
No, that's a really good point. He also mentioned that we have management solutions, but it's too labor intensive. So even the providers recognize that the amount of cleaning and maintenance you have to do to remove and, keep removed actinos from your environment is too hard. And it's not even like it's too hard for a normal person. It's very difficult for a CIRS person. But he did mention a couple of things. One, that staph competes with actinos, and also like quote unquote good bacteria competes with actinos. So things like I think it's the lacto whatever that you can get in yogurt. Go look at the back of a yogurt package if you want to know what that is. And then that they also don't like acid. So one thing we've been talking about recently in the group is like, do you go for these like heavy hitting products that are super riddled with chemicals, or do you take a more natural approach to managing your actinos? Personally, I got my actino score under 10,000. It was 250K previously just by using water and vinegar as my cleaning solution. I didn't go for a Fantastic or Windex, which are the two like really heavy hitting chemicals that are sometimes recommended by providers. So it is possible because actinos don't like acid. Kind of as a follow-up to that, if you are removing all of the bacteria from your environment, which if you're removing actinos and doing actinos cleaning, it's really hard to like only get the actinos. You're going to be removing all of the bacteria from your environment. And so then the conversation becomes, how do you add back in good bacteria? So I know in the past when I've taken antibiotics, my provider has recommended to me to eat yogurt to help replace, the gut biome, the good bacteria in your gut biome. And how can we implement that strategy in our homes? There is a product called Homebiotic, and it's a spray that you can spray in your home, and it replaces that good bacteria.
Yeah, and I want to address like if people are like, or if people are confused about, well, some people say Fantastic and Windex only, and then some people. So the reason for that is that we all know how much Dr. Shoemaker loves published work, right? We all know that all of his research is out there. It's great. It's great. The testing that was done under his supervision of showing benefits in like actinos cleaning was done with Fantastic. So that's why he's like, Fantastic. That's it. Fantastic. You should be using Fantastic. But we know that really, and this is always the case for all the biotoxins, it's not about killing them. It's about removing them. And to remove them, that's where, okay, at that level, if all we're trying to do is remove them, which again, that's the whole point, is the water, vinegar, and dish soap solid. So if you're like, oh, should I do like the super powered Fantastic or Windex thing? Like that's why some people recommend that. But I think I've talked to IEPs and And other practitioners, they're more on the natural side because especially if you're chemical sensitive, fantastic smells strong. Like it's I don't mind it, but I could imagine if you were more sick, it would not be okay to use, especially all over your house. Oh my God.
So I only use vinegar to clean, and I have for years, like predating CIRS. And when I went and stayed at your house and I like opened up the cupboards to get to the cleaning supplies, I could smell the fantastic. Like I hadn't even sprayed it and I was just like, oh,
Yep. It was
hits
like
right in the
walking,
face.
yeah, it's like walking into the aisle, that aisle. Everyone knows that aisle at the grocery store. I mean, you can't stand in it very long. And I don't think that's just because I have CIRS. Like that's a strong, the whole thing. But yeah, I have always been a strong chemical like person most of my life. So I am working my way towards the more natural stuff for sure. Because it's not pleasant. I agree with you on that.
And then he also spoke briefly about COVID, how COVID is a priming event that will make you sensitive to actinos. So I think previously I've said that COVID is a biotoxin, and it seems like maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's just the trigger to like activate your CIRS genes, and suddenly you were fine in a space, but now you're not fine because you had that COVID experience. He also mentioned that actinos are a violent driver of neurodegeneration. I thought that was an amazing quote from him because we have had pushback in the communities that we're in outside of the CIRS community about like, okay, well, if I can manage my symptoms well enough, what's the point of treating CIRS? And the point of treating CIRS is you don't want to have a tiny brain. You don't
Yeah,
want to have that volume loss. You don't want to have that constant neuroinflammation because we don't know what that's going to do 20, 30, 40 years down the line. So the sooner you can address your CIRS and the sooner you can stop that neurodegeneration and hopefully recover your brain volume, the better.
absolutely. Yep.
The last thing I have here is that just reiterating the Oasis, they showed that 24 hours with an Oasis showed that the genes were turned off for actino reactivity. So they did this as a genie test. So they did a genie test and then they did 24 hours of Oasis and then they did a genie test again. And it turned off the genes that had lit up on the genie test for actino's reactivity. So it's pretty powerful, especially if you think actinos is your big thing. Again, maybe look into those Oasis products because they have it's a third party independent study on it. So it's not foolproof, but it's definitely indicative of being a really powerful tool for healing. His main point in the talk, though, and the reason why I said it was kind of a nothing burger, is that we don't have enough information. CIRS was just found in 1997. Actinos is a very recent thing within the last like 7 to 9 years. And we just don't have the studies, we don't have the data to back up all of these approaches. And hopefully, with more information, they can make the cleaning protocols more accessible, the patient management more accessible. Like, what if someone has a vaginal swab of actinos and babies get their skin biome from the birth canal? Like, all of these are really interesting questions that will hopefully be answered in the next few years of CIRS research.
Yeah. And once again, a good reminder of why the theme this year was publish, publish, publish. We need more research. And overall, and you'll see as we continue the series recapping CIRSx, the research that was presented and is being worked on is really exciting. Yeah, I'm exciting. Is that the right word? Cool, fun,
No, it's
fun?
exciting. I
Yeah,
know
it
that
is.
like the last talk of the entire conference was one that like I cannot wait to get to, and I
Oh, I
think we're
know.
going to be covering it soon.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Let's leave that cliffhanger up there. But shout out to Ming Dooley. Can't wait for that one. So yeah, we'll be covering that soon.
And in the meantime, if you are looking for more resources and support on your CIRS journey, you can join us over at the cirsgroup.com.
We'll see you there.